Scott and Jenna Henderson were active youth leaders in their church when they found out Jenna had a reoccurrence of ovarian cancer. She was 30 years old when she lost her fight against the disease. Scott published Jenna's journal entries in the book, Worth the Suffering, which chronicles Jenna's passing from this world to the next. Through her suffering, Jenna shares her stories of finding hope, joy, and peace with God.
Joining us now is her husband, Scott. Scott, it's wonderful to have you with us.
Thank you for having me.
Talk about your book, Worth the Suffering. Let's begin by going back to the place and the time 3 years into your marriage when you find out that Jenna has had recurring cancer.
Right.
And this time, you know, you have to think by the third time the cancer's come back, how did y'all handle that?
Yeah, so it was devastating, but knowing that Jenna and I had our faith, had our friends and our family to lean on, it was easier, but it didn't make it any less difficult. Yeah. And so one of the things that Jenna would always say is that God doesn't give you things that you can't handle. And we didn't necessarily agree with that. What we didn't agree with is that with God, we can handle those things that come our way that we can't handle on our own.
Yes. How long a time was it from the time you received word that the cancer had recurred to the time of Jenna's death?
So it was about 1.5 years.
Wow, not
So,
very
yeah,
long.
yeah.
But you learned such amazing lessons in that time, and they are shared in the book, really written by Jenna.
Right,
These are her
right.
blogs, her prayers
Yes.
that are in this book. What inspired you to write it?
So I just felt like I was called to share her story because there are so many truths that she shares of joy and suffering that I couldn't contain. And I just felt like this story is a story worth sharing. And so it led to me taking about 1 year to put it all together and to compile it and put it in a book.
Jenna blogged in depth about the things she was feeling, about her treatments, about her hopes and her dreams for the future. You know, these things really touch people, I think, because she was so candid about it.
She was, yes.
Did she have times where she was down? I mean, she faced so many different things.
She did. So what she was really good at was lamenting. And a lament is just essentially saying, God, here are all the things that I really, really don't like and I wish would go away and I really want this. But
she always had the but at the end of that.
There was always the but of, you are still good and you are still faithful and your promises are true.
If you and Jenna had not shared the faith that you had, what kind of a difference would that have made in your lives during this challenge?
I don't know where I would be today if I didn't have that faith. If she didn't have that faith, I don't believe she would have had that joy. And so every day would have looked like this is the worst thing ever.
Yeah.
But that's not what every day was like. Every day was, we get to go on this adventure together and we get to share our faith together. And whatever God does is good, even if it's not what we want.
Yeah.
And so it was a completely different outlook.
You seem to also have been given the gift through all of that to just do today. You know, to just deal with what's happening today. Was that deliberate or did it intentional or did it just happen for you?
No, I think that that's a lot of who I am, first off, because thinking also God tells us don't plan for the future because you're only promised today. And so knowing that and knowing that I really don't have control, and I've learned just with Jenna, I'm not in control of this situation. So to make the best and the most out of today is all I have. And so that's the way I've learned to live.
You put the book together in such an interesting way. There is an arrow above each chapter or each writing that is Jenna's, and then you have waves that are her friends in there, and then leaves when it's a prayer that Jenna has sent up.
Yes.
The commentary from her friends is so poignant. Why do you think she had such a deep impact on people?
She was authentic and she cared deeply about others to the point where she would take her own self and put it aside and just be intentional. And her heart was always for her friends and to love well. And I think that's just that's her character. That's who she was. And a lot of that has to deal with her faith in Christ. And so to see her love her friends that way, just you would see, and I would always say, I wanted to date someone who had really, really good friendships. And to see Jenna and her friendships, she had so many, and they were all they were all authentic and loving. And so that was one of the things that was attractive to her.
You had so many things in your lives, and I say the two of you because if Jenna was going through it, you were going through it too, but where you had to let go of things that matter. I think of the part that you write about where you were determining whether you should harvest eggs so you could have a family in the future. And in short order, even that was taken away from you.
It was. So it's really an interesting place to be stuck right now for me, to see my friends move forward with their families, or to be kind of in this place where I can't move forward with that. But that's a blessing and a curse to not have kids right now. So I think kids would have allowed me to move forward more quickly, but had less time to really think through and to see where God is showing up in this.
Mentioning blessing and curse, you say that the journey that you went through was both a nightmare and a blessing.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
So to lose your wife when she's 30 changes everything. Your whole future, your whole vision of what life is supposed to be is gone. And so you cling to what now? What next? But it's a blessing because God's story is, Jen and I really wanted God to be lifted high in her cancer. And we thought if there was this miracle that shows everyone God's great healing power, and then think about all the glory that gets to be shown in him. When that didn't happen, it was devastating. On the other side of things, I know that thousands of people are being impacted by Jenna. And Jenna had said, if just one person gets to know Jesus because of my cancer, it's worth it.
Yeah. You know, I think also in the book you have such a way of sharing lighter moments that happened for all of you. I think of how when she was having trouble eating and keeping food down and was losing weight more than she wanted. I mean, her goal was the banquet on the other side so she could eat everything
she talked about eating everything she wanted to. She talked about going and dancing or running in a field. And she would just say, hey, I'm DNR. Like she would joyfully say, hey, I'm DNR, which means that you don't want to be resuscitated if things go south. And so she was joyfully expectant of meeting.
Yeah, she said, how awful would it be to finally see Jesus and be there and then have somebody yank you back?
Right, so it's really hard to be upset and depressed in that moment when your wife is so joyful.
Yeah, well, there are so many people who are struggling with terminal illnesses, and I know this book would be a great encouragement to you. The book is called Worth the Suffering, and no matter what the outcome of your situation, actually there's meat in here for all of us as believers. It's available at worththesuffering.com and wherever books are sold. And Jenna Henderson is the one who contributed to it. Her husband Scott is the one who put it all together. Thanks, Scott.
Thank you,
Great
Terry.
to have you
Appreciate
with us.
Thanks.